What up, everyone? DJ Nubis here with you on the Meltdown Radio podcast with my good friend and fellow kaiju fanatic, Jedi Grand Velle. Thank you, sir, for being here with me today.
It's a pleasure, brother.
And we're going to sit here and spotlight on Jet Jaguar, my kaiju spotlight segments that I've been doing. And obviously, I chose you for this particular character because this also happens to be one of your favorite kaiju Godzilla films. And so first, for those that might be kind of new to you in general, like what was it about Godzilla versus Megalon that not only made it your favorite film, but how much of a factor was Jet a part of that fandom for you for this particular film?
Well, first off, Godzilla versus Megalon was the first Godzilla film that I ever saw. I mean, that's one thing, but through time and effort, I think through the aging process of watching it again and realizing that Jet Jaguar, I mean, besides Godzilla, favorite kaiju, Jet Jaguar is something about him that it's kind of related a little bit towards me a little bit, in terms of it's not so much that I, am somebody who's just like, okay, this is who I'm going to be. It's like, okay, you're sent in to do something, you're asked to do something, but then when you take the initiative to say, okay, this needs to be done, when you don't have to have anyone tell you it needs to be done. This the correlation of who Jet Jaguar is. Like, yes, he's a programmable particular robot, cyborg, whatever you want to call him. But the thing about it is he's more sentient in terms of when he knows there's a job that needs to be done, he's going to go ahead and do it and not, have anyone, just say, hey, this needs to be done. You have to get like, no, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go ahead and do it the way it needs to be done because it is right and it's necessary. And I think Jet Jaguar is someone that through pain and effort, yeah, he's going to suffer some dings and head bolts and butts and everything, all that, but he still comes in there fighting, even when the fight is tough. Even though he might lose, he's still going to give his all to make sure he does that. And that kind of says something about me because that's kind of who my persona is. It's like, yeah, I mean, I know that I'm not, I know I'm going to get knocked down, like Jet Jaguar. I know I'm going to get knocked down. I know I'm going to get punched out. But the thing is, I get right back up and get back into the fight. And that's just who he is, I mean, he is someone who's damn sure going to make sure he's going to give everything 100%, even 1,000% of who he is. And that's why I feel that his character really comes through the most. And I feel like that's something I feel some people may not notice, but that's exactly who he is. And that's why I feel it's kind of represented me particularly.
So it's kind of like a personal inspiration in some ways.
Right.
Speaking of that, for a long time, Godzilla versus Megalon is considered one of the more campier Godzilla films that are in the Toho universe because of the flying kick and stuff like that. But the thing that I love about doing these spotlight shows is that I can actually sit down and kind of reevaluate each kaiju in a way. And I know you're going to agree with this because you were kind of bringing it up. Is that despite the campiness, it's also very amazing how, for a movie that's old as this, that the AI aspect is like looking way beyond its time. Like it's forward thinking. Like you would never even think about it, back then.
Mm-hmm.
But they were already, Toho and Japan were already thinking about, oh, where can AI take us in the computer age? And we weren't even really in the infancy of that at that time. So just seeing how now with our technological advances, just how much of an impact that would be with computers, robots. We see them now, like they make these droids and stuff that can do, even what's the ones that do like they're almost like Instacart. They'll remotely drive and deliver you food and stuff. So
they have those already, which is frightening, but it's at the same time very, very true. It's very up there with us now.
Yeah, it's like in the movie, he, as you said, he was initially controlled by humans and created by humans, and then of course the aliens were trying to hijack that, and take him over to use him as a way of destroying the Earth. But he, with the AI ability, like reprogrammed himself to the point that he can think for himself and learn. And obviously, he could also change shape, get bigger. Which at the time I remember first watching, I was like, "Well, how is he going to fight any kind of kaiju being this small?"
Hmm.
Course, we found out, that he's able to transform himself, which was really, really cool. And then even in the end, when he was done, he was like, okay, I can revert back to, allowing the humans to kind of dictate what I do. So it's a really cool thing. And it was so forward thinking that you don't really think about it at the time that you're watching the film. Cause it's always like, again, we're like, we're big fans of the kaijus and we're like, big monster. And that's all we really care
Yeah.
about. But when you kind of look a little deeper on it, especially with his particular character, it's really cool just to sit there and say, "Damn, man, this is way ahead of its time."
It is, and see, you bring up something is that the fact that this is way back during that time, and as a kid, you're not really thinking about that. I mean, because I know particularly me, I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't looking at that. But my mind, is the kind that thinks outside the box, that looks at things that they're there, but you may see it in a different light. And I realized that with Jet Jaguar, yes, like yes, he's able to manipulate himself to grow size, but also know that when the fight is done, it's done. He's not gonna, try to do a he's not gonna do a Terminator or a Matrix type style, takeover or something like that of humanity. He's actually going to allow himself to say, not to be enslaved, but be at the command of knowing that what is necessary is going to be necessary. And knowing that he is something, as I say, a very sentient being, is something almost, you could just say he's literally alive when that juice of, you know, self, preservation comes into play. It kicks in, but knowing that it's helping humanity at the right time. And but like I say, you don't think about this as a like I say, a little kid, but as your mind grows, and if you, as I say before, if you think outside the box, you see a whole layer of things that are there. But it's so, I guess that's why I say is some people just don't see it, because it's just like, and you mentioned big monster, big kaiju, all that. But I know for myself, as time progresses and things have gone by and what I've experienced in life, I can see things with film. It's a medium that I can actually analyze better and see things that others don't even see. Whereas others may just say, no, just dumb picture, whatever it is. That's all it is. But I know deep down there are many layers upon layers of what's being brought to the table right here. And I feel that with the Japanese, they even, well, not just even Japanese, but just Eastern cinema, they're very good at putting certain layered images or messages into their movies, whether it be sci-fi, drama, horror. There's something in there that's there, but I feel like you have to be that kind of pick lock, that kind of safe cracker to kind of crack open what's actually there and it's presentable, but you have to say, okay, what's the tumbler of this? What's the numbers? It's like you have to really reach out and find what is being presented that is actually there, but you just have to see it for yourself, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I just was thinking about this. Like, so obviously I was born in '70, so I'm basically an '80s kid. But throughout the '70s and early '80s, like, is when I was kind of starting to get into rock and roll. Probably around 8 or 9, and
Mhm.
I remember like in, I think it was '80 or '81 when Styx did Mr. Roboto. And
I
again,
remember.
this is not something that at the time it was just like kind of like a pop rock song that I liked. But when you think about the lyrics and again how advanced it was, because this was early '80s, so again, I think the internet for us really took off in the late '90s. So that's like almost a decade ahead of time,
Right.
where they're talking about artificial intelligence and stuff. So it's really, really interesting how even musicians were kind of like tuned in to what was going on in Japan with technology and how advanced they were thinking ahead. Like even if that's not referencing Jet Jaguar, it's just the way that Japan was approaching things is
Right.
really cool.
No,
So,
I
oh,
think
go
it,
ahead.
well, just add on that. I think you're right about that. I mean, they can see, they can kind of foreshadow certain things because certain technologies that were coming out of Japan were kind of just the forefront of what was to come in future technology later on. Because remember, I tell you this because I kind of found this out, or not just found it out, but kind of theorized how Jet Jaguar is actually able to grow to the size that it is, and it's as I say, it's just for story reference. But if you look at actual, references, actually look at the back history of certain things with Japan scientists and what they was going, someone came up with the thought of nanotechnology. And
Ooh,
the thing I thought about was nanotechnology is something that where it's dealing with little, robotic, whatever,
yeah,
that was the reason why he was able to grow from a man-sized robot to this gargantuan, size being. And the interesting thing is, it was actually I don't know his name, but it was actually a Japanese scientist who actually created or came up with the theory of nanotechnology. And it was kind of like, wait a minute, could they have integrated that into this story and we just didn't notice that, And it's kind of
right.
weird that this was, because I looked this up and I was just kind of like, what is nanotechnology and everything? And it turned out there was actually a Japanese scientist who created or came up with that theory. And I was just like, whoa, do you mean to tell me they're not just ahead of certain technologies or certain theories, but they actually kind of created the basis for what's to come in the future? So it's kind of just like, wow, to find out that you discovered this by accident. And I like I say, I came up with the theory by accident because I think I've seen so many things about nanotechnology. I'm thinking like, it's just a silly idea. So when I actually looked it up and discovered who created it, it's like, wow. I mean, it may have been by accident or coincidence that that was in play, but that's what came into play in thinking my thought that that's how Jet Jaguar works. But the fact is, it's coming from his home base of Japan, and it's
Yeah,
just like, oh wow, that's just too on the nose, and it just makes me think like, wow, I'm actually smarter than I thought it was, but maybe it was just that's just how I think like that. So it's
yeah,
weird.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. Uh, Now, although I'm not really super familiar with Ultraman or the content, I've seen, a couple episodes here and there are some similarities between him and Jet Jaguar. So, in your opinion, do you think at the time Toho kind of took inspiration from Ultraman when they decided to go with Jet Jaguar, or do you think it's just coincidence?
I can say it did. I mean, because you got to remember, you had not just Ultraman, but you had stuff like Zone Fighter, Spectrum Man,
Hmm.
Mighty Jack, and they took a hit from Ultraman. I'm pretty sure from that too. I wouldn't have hesitate to doubt that it was inspired by, Ultraman, by him being able to grow and everything. Be able to grow the kite size. I mean, how can you not? I mean, it's there. I mean, it was very popular at that time. I mean, Ultraman came out in '66, so and his popularity is just like went like wildfire. So
Right.
naturally, there's going to be copycats coming left and right to say we could kind of like hone in and kind of do our own thing. So I wouldn't hesitate to guess because I didn't know about Ultraman until years later. I think I actually didn't know about Ultraman until like either no, it was late '90s till I actually heard about what or who Ultraman was. So
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think for myself, I didn't really know about him until maybe a decade ago. So I was even later to the party than you were.
see, But that's nothing wrong with that, because there are so many fan bases and made this thing so popular here in the US.
Well,
And
that's a great thing about the web is as many of the cons that we can have about internet use. Like some of the
Mhm.
great things that come out of it is being able to be exposed to stuff that you would never even know about.
Yeah, yes, because I know that's the thing. That's the beauty of that, because I wasn't exposed, and this is way before the internet. I wasn't knowledgeable about, like, say, Gamera, or like, say, other tech. And when I come to find out about these other type of shows that were going on back in the the late '60s, early '70s, I was kind of like, oh, I didn't realize they exist. But when they say this is what this was about and this was based on it, I was like, and it was made by the same people, I was like, wow, how was I sleeping on that? But as you say, once the internet came around, it kind of trickled down and gave you a little bit more info. But then you have the fans, as you say, when you go to these cons, they really tell you about it, and they have to see how much of a really of a fan they are, because some people have had to correct me many times about, well, this is the Ultraman suit that was used in the show, but they say no, that's actually the Ultraman Toro, or Ultraman Ultraman 7 costume. I was like, oh wow, so you had to be specifically specific on these things, and it's like you
Yeah,
kind
you just
of,
say, "Oh yeah, this is Ultraman." Oh, he's like, "No, it's Ultraman Deluxe."
yeah,
Something
they
that
had
you wouldn't really know. Yeah, the
that.
knowledge that people have in this community is amazing because even with guys like Goji or Omniviewer or even Sentry and yourself, like naming certain figurines, like even if it's not just who makes it, but just where it's coming from. Like it's so funny for me because we talked about Ultraman, our late discovery of him. Like in the 90s was like a really weird time for me because like I was doing my own thing, but I wasn't really I'd kind of stepped away from Godzilla in terms of like not really knowing there was anything out there.
Yeah,
So by the time the early 2000s came around and I think when I saw G2000 and Final Wars, I was like, wow, they actually made a couple of new Godzilla films. And people are like, dude, there's tons of them in the 90s. I'm like, what? Where was I? What was I doing?
right.
And you find out that you have all these other G films and the Gamera trilogy that was really great that I never knew was out there. The Mothra trilogy. Uh, I've kind of struggled with that one a little bit, except for the third one. I like the third one a lot, but I just didn't even know half of that shit was out there. So I had to go back and try to like rent them and watch them and say, oh wow, because the last time I remember 85 was like the last one that I remembered. 84, 85 Godzilla from America. And it's like I thought they just went dead until the 2000s.
Right.
And no, they had all this shit they were doing. I was like, damn. So it's
Yeah.
kind of nice to be able to, have the internet and learn about some of these other projects and kaiju and
And
that
weirdly
universe.
enough, I found out about the later Heisei films only by accident, when and this is not and this is not even through the internet. It was by when when Entertainment Tonight was actually a relevant thing back then, when they were actually filming the uh Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. And I was just like, oh man, it's a fresh new Godzilla film coming out of Japan. It's like, so, and it was so weird to know that this was still a reference. But like you say, kind of like you, I kind of hinted off Godzilla a little bit at the tail end of the '90s, or really in the middle of the '90s, because I was kind of like going through some things, I mean, dealing with grown up pain, because you're in your 20s and you don't really know what you want to do, what you want to be, or anything like that. And to me, Godzilla wasn't relevant at the time, but would have showed that actually Godzilla is more relevant than you might think it is, And
Yeah.
I feel that to me, even though when the '98 Godzilla came out, um, you know, piece of crap film to me, but that's
Yeah,
just my
you notice I didn't even bother mentioning that
right. That's why I say I look,
one.
you know how I feel about that film, so I won't
Yeah.
stress on it too much. But what the thing about it is, even though that film came out, it did re-energize my love for Godzilla. And after that, I realized there was more to Godzilla than just, okay, it's a man in a rubber suit. No, there's a lot of philosophical uh, basis to it that you just overlook, that most people won't see. And after that, like, I really dug deep into finding out, what was the basis, or what was the emphasis, or the inspiration to any of these characters, whether it be Godzilla, whether it be Jet Jaguar, whether it be Hedorah, or whether it be King Ghidorah. I mean, what made these individuals come to being, and why did they become to being? And I feel like that is something I've realized structures me when it comes to anything, especially coming out of the East. What is their basis for why they make these things, and why it's there now? And I feel like that, to me, is what makes my mind particularly more satisfying. Hungry for more, because I want to know these things.
Hmm.
And like I say, going back to Jet Jaguar, he is something that I feel that was very important in terms of what is his whole basis of being in existence. Because we know why Godzilla is in existence. We know that, but what are all of the other ones coming to play? Why they come into play? So
Well, I want to talk a little bit too about obviously the MonsterVerse and the implication of a monarch that's been out there with the first season, and ever since GVK and the introduction of Mechagodzilla, we have seen like the human race advance in those stories with technology. And it's funny because you mentioned nanotech, that being a possibility because of the ships they have now. And of course, we saw Kong's glove from GVKE. Um, I think this would be a great time to reintroduce Jet Jaguar to the world via the Monsterverse, even though we know that the cost to borrow the name and the image would be very difficult. But I did find this very interesting, and you might find it very interesting too, as this article by Screen Rant. And basically, they're saying the kaiju has long been least likely addition to Godzilla's monster, just as received an unexpected boost in his chances of another big screen appearance. And of course, they just kind of, and if you guys want to look it up, who's watching this, you can. It's Screen Rant, and it's just, they're talking about how Jet Jaguar could be a good kaiju to bring back into the monsterverse because of everything that we've talked about with the technology that we have now. And so I don't know if it ever happens, but obviously one thing that everybody keeps talking about is whether or not we want Angarius to show up or Jet Jaguar, and then some people are saying they want Destroy. I mean, I'd rather go with Biollante personally because I think it makes more sense. Even in the Toho's -1 thing, Biollante would make a lot of sense, but I don't know what they're going to do there. Uh, but yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts that with the MonsterVerse, like with everything that's been going on? Because you've been keeping up with that like we have. So,
yeah.
how do you feel about whether or not it's a possibility him to show up in that?
Oh, I'm not going to rule it out. I would like, as I say, I would like him to come back, but I'm I'm a realist when it comes to this. It's like there has to be a grounded, because I know that the next one's supposed to be a grounded, more grounded, because it's supposed to be more focused on Godzilla. But I think it has to be a real grounded reason for him to be appearing. And if it does, I'm all for that, but even I know that, you just can't throw somebody. I mean, you just can't throw. It's kind of the thing that Hollywood has a real bad thing about doing. It's like taking something that's popular, or at least as far as actresses and actors, throwing them in a film, and you think like, okay, we're gonna get more bucks because they're in this. It's like, no, that's not. That to me is a very dangerous thing to be doing, because you're gonna probably lose profit because you have this person in this. So I would think like, because I've actually said, I mean, actually it wasn't just me, but it was somebody else who said that there was a plausible way that he could show up in a future, MonsterVerse film, and it meant like that actually makes sense. I mean, it's possible, and I wouldn't rule it out. But honestly, I would love it if they do it and do him justice. I mean, I just don't
Yeah,
want to put him in there and feel like, oh, hey, there's Jet Jaguar, the likeness of him, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of like that anime about a few years back.
Singular Point. Yeah,
Yeah, and I was just like, no, no, no. This is. I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, you got the Jaguar, you got the Jet Jaguar face, but his whole physical being is like, what the?
look like was it the Iron Giant bottom,
Yeah, it's
basically.
kind of like that. That's like, man, get this olive oil looking sucker out of here, man. I don't want this.
Yeah,
That's
that's always a conundrum because there's a portion of Godzilla fans and kaiju fans that really want more content, but there is this bit of a hiccup when it comes to America doing the films because it's been kind of inconsistent in writing and how they put their characters. I mean, I know there's two separates. Like Legendary is kind of going more for the campiness, whereas Toho is getting back to more serious character development and depth and stuff like that. Uh, but again, Legendary started out with 214, where it's like a little more serious, and then it kind of just gradually going back to the campy stuff, which is fine. We all love it, but as you said, if they're gonna try to do this with whatever kaiju they bring in, it's like you want to make sure they're treating it with respect and actually trying to do justice. Now, granted, they did great with King of the Monsters. I thought every
oh yeah.
monster looked great. So the possibility is there. But that kind of leads me into another thing, which has been a rumor for a while, is maybe the crossover with Pacific Rim with Jet, because I know that Jet's name is sort of Jet Jaguar, so it's
Yeah.
got the similarity. So uh, if they do this crossover, Jet Jaguar could be like a catalyst for that, in a way.
I mean, like I say, I mean, I've heard that rumor for a good while, and I
Yeah.
said to myself, like if they was to do that, it would make it would make no sense not to have him incorporated with that, but it would have to be where it's like I said again, do him justice, and he's actually not so much run by humans, but he's actually programmed by human, and he's able to do his own thing. But again, it's a touchy, as you say, it's a touchy subject. But then again, I realize with Hollywood, it's not all about what the fans are going to like. It's always going to be about, hey, how much
Selling
money?
point. Yeah.
That's all it's going to be. So that's the tricky but very delicate part of doing that.
Yeah. I'm just one of those people, like, I'm kind of like, if it were up to me at the Monsterverse and, I didn't have to worry about money, I have so many ideas. I'm sure you, Sentry, and everyone else would have a lot of great ideas too. We've talked about, relentlessly about Rodan's backstory or Mothra's origin story, but it's like, sure, if Jet Jaguar became like a piece of the Monsterverse, like that's a great opportunity to bring in Gigan as a type of villain, but again, whether or not Legendary is even on the same page in any kind of way, or whether or not they think it's feasible because of that aspect of, can we make this a selling point to people outside of the kaiju fandom? And that's always going to be the tough thing because we want it as fans, but majority of the audiences that go out to this, they don't know a whole lot about the backstory of these monsters or even most of Godzilla's history. I mean, I've seen people say, "Oh yeah, Godzilla, is very awesome. I didn't even know it existed till Legendary did it." And I'm like, "Oh really? Well, that's unfortunate." Yeah.
Exactly.
But I mean, but you're gonna have that sometimes, especially with the younger people. That like that's how that opens the door for them to go back and revisit all the other films that are in the catalog. But if they brought him back, the one thing that this is what Goji and I were kind of talking about with Ingarius a little bit, was if they bring back Jet Jaguar, in your mind, like what design would you like to see? What kind of weaponry would you like to see? Or would you rather him kind of stay kind of like what he was?
Well, I can honestly say that it's kind of like with the Transformers brand and how it looked when back in the cartoon days. I mean, when Optimus Prime, specifically Optimus Prime, see something like that. I mean, it's a design like that, but it was another design where it's him and Godzilla. Godzilla's looking back, not so much like that, but it's where it's more like it's a kind of mecha. It's almost like a
Pacific Rim, the
Pacific
Jaegers.
Rim, but it
Yeah, I
still
saw
has,
that. Had like the turbines or something going
yeah,
on up here.
something like
Yeah,
that. But it's like it's more upgraded because honestly, you do want to have that more to the day than like I say, what you had back then, because that was more to the kids and more to, in a sense, more campy sense wise. But I feel like in this day and age, it's kind of like with 84 Godzilla, it's more updated and more adult. I feel like that would be the thing with Jet Jaguar. I mean, I want to see that familiarity with him, but I want to see him where he's like, okay, he's a little bit upgraded and almost to the point of he can do a couple of things like with not too much, because I don't want him. I feel like that's kind of pushing it where you can do a little few Iron Man type things, such as, maybe doing the laser things coming out of his hands and they can slice through or whatever,
yeah,
but he's never really had weaponry put on him, but just enough where it's like, okay, he's got a few of these integrated into him, but not so much as like, okay, this is going to throw it way off balance of what Jet Jaguar is. Because I don't, I feel like you want to do him justice, but at the same time, just do it upgraded where it's like it's it's like me, probably like you, it's a childhood favorite. It's a familiarity to us, but it's like say, okay, we're adults now. I want to see a little something different now. I want my adult mind to see
yeah,
something really badass. And he's just like, okay, what we saw in the old film back then, we want to see him jacked up and looking like badass right now, and that's the thing I really want to see if that was ever to happen, because I really do believe that will come to pass. And if it does, it's going to be such a sweet, sweet moment. Because I know for myself, I'm going to just be like, okay, I can die now. I saw him upgraded, and this is what. And they have him next to Godzilla in a multiverse moment. It's like, oh shit, over 50 years of what happened there is happening now. And it's like, just cements that, okay, Jet Jaguar is here to stay and he's upgraded. And it was like, okay, we're ready to go. So it's like, it's satisfying, not just for me, but for future audiences who might get into it.
yeah. I really like your comparison with Iron Man. I think that's really cool because, like, I even though people hate it the most, I like Iron Man 2 a lot.
Yeah. I
And I like a lot of his design in that for Iron Man. So, like,
Mhm.
having some of that, and then I was thinking, what about like some sort of sword that's extendable or something that he can
Yeah.
pull out, almost like Voltron in some ways, or and similarly, it's like Kroll, like the Star, have that as like some sort of weapon,
Maybe.
but not so copycat. Like, like he has like kind of like the Predator ship, and not exactly like it, but just incorporate so many cool things. It's almost like a ninja or samurai in some
Right.
ways.
And as long as he
So
can still fly too, that's the other thing.
yeah,
I say,
oh yeah,
as long as he still flies, I like I say, I feel like that would be the key thing. To just make sure he can still fly, and it's not cheesy in a sense. I want that to be the case.
yeah. Well, anyway, regardless of what happens with Jet Jaguar, whether it's through Legendary or Toho, what, in your opinion, will be the legacy that he leaves behind with the Godzilla universe and the fandom in general? Like, what do you think his legacy will be?
Well, I feel that like all the things that have come out not just Toho, but Daiei or any other company that's made kaiju films. I think his legacy will stand the test of time because he's over 50 years old, and the fact that people still have a great notion of him, I feel that he will still be recognized and appreciated because you got if if you ever saw the recent 70, when I say 70, the recent short film of Godzilla and Jet Jaguar versus King Ghidorah, it really was a showing of, because they had done a film, beforehand with Godzilla and Jet Jaguar battling one another, which is kind of off putting. But I realized, that's just to get the future generations, kind of get their whet their appetite for what they're seeing. But it shows right there that somebody is still feeling the effects of who Jet Jaguar is, just like Godzilla, just like Rodan, just like Mothra, just like, Gamera. It's like they're old pieces of time, but their time is timeless. It's effortless. It's always going to be there. And I feel Jet Jaguar is the same thing. I mean, because look, I mean, who would ever think that Godzilla popularity will reach the heights of what it is now? I mean, it's not
Yeah.
just by the MonsterVerse efforts. I mean, true enough, that's just skyrocketed more, but the fact that it's still relevant, even with the 54th version, still relevant today, 70 years now, it's like I feel like yes, his thought process of what he is, of what he's become, and what he's so popular. I mean, so popular by, it will not go away because there's no way you can just destroy or bury that kind of figure into infamy. Infamy, because let's face it, you can't do that with Frankenstein. You damn sure can't do that with Dracula. You can't do that with the creature, the black cocoon. You can't do that with the Wolfman. You can't when you create these things, they are not just gonna go away. You can't avoid Darth Vader. You can't avoid Spock. Once they're created and they're put out into the open and they're put out there into the public, it's like they are going to stay there no matter what you try to do. You're not going to erase them from people's mind. They're going to stay there forever. And I feel Jet Jaguar is the same thing. He's that entity that's going to live on even after we're gone.
Yep. I agree 100%. Like it's very interesting just for a character who's only appeared in like one movie, basically one real live action film, that even now, as you said, with the legendary doing Earth thing, and then with -1, like how popular Godzilla is. So it's like I really do hope between both studios that they continue to try to put out material. Like there is a fan base for it, and I know that making films is not cheap, so
Mhm.
that's always going to be the one hurdle they have to get over. But for Japan, it's not probably not near as hard. I mean, for the amount of money they put into -1, they made 10 times that, which was amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy for them on that. But for America, it's like much more expensive endeavors, and so if they can find a way just to keep the writing strong, and then just if they do borrow more creatures from Toho, that they do a good job with it in terms of incorporating into the stories, that'd be fun. But for Jet Jaguar, it's really amazing that he's still, even with Ultraman and all his hype now with coming back and people learning about him, it's like there's always someone that says, "Oh yeah, but have you seen Jet Jaguar?"
Yeah.
And so I really like that he still is talked about within the circles of robotics and kaiju and stuff like that. So, any final thoughts?
Just the fact that it's just the fact that it's funny how such a creature, and he's not even really a creature, he's more, like I say, he's more synthetic than anything, has touched my feelings of who what he is and everything. Because like I say, this latest short film that they did with him and Godzilla and Ghidorah, I would never imagine that, and that's funny how kaijus and what you see them as have changed who you are. Because for a kid, you know, you just love seeing kaijus beat the hell out of one another. But
Hmm.
then when you see in what I mentioned before, how a kaiju will, you know, no matter what it is, if he has to go to a battle, like say, give his life up for whatever, you know, he will do that. And that's what he kind of did in this latest short film. And to know that you get emotional from that, I literally, I literally cried watching this, you know, with that end part of Jet Jaguar, you know, giving his life up. I realized that that is the thing I feel that really cements a strong character to begin with, is that they don't just hone in on, you know, childhood feelings or anything that, you know, you was growing up with. You know, I feel it really sets the boundaries of knowing that there's something more to these characters than just the, you know, uh, rubber, or even the, you know, abstract versions of them. I think it's about, what do they mean to you as a fan, or just as a person in general. You know, I mean, yeah, you could be a fan all you want to be, but how does it affect you as an individual? Because I know, as I told you, you know, how Jet Jaguar, you know, kind of represents something that I feel that I can be, you know. But I feel in the end, Jet Jaguar, like all the kaijus that we've talked about and kind of rant about, they really show that there's more to them than just what we see on screen, where we see them in art, where we see them in video games, or whatever. We know that they will stay in not just your brain, but they'll stay in your heart. And I feel like when they
Hmm.
in your heart, that has a more satisfying mode, because it will not go away, you know. And I feel Jet Jaguar is one of those type of entities that is just that. They'll never go away. And like I say, for the test of time, they'll encourage other, you know, future, you know, Jet Jaguar fans and kaiju fans in the least. And I feel like knowing that that is a staple of how good a character is, they will always be there, no matter what we try to do or anyone try to do to them.
Well said. Yeah, I agree. So, anything coming to your channel that people need to know about?
I do have something come. In fact, I do have something coming up. Actually, next week. It's going to be a. It's actually going to be a 45th anniversary talk on the first Star Trek picture. You know, the one that came out in '79. It was released, like I say, 45 years ago this year. And I'm gonna kind of go into a kind of, you know, kind of retro, you know, talk about this. Other than that, nothing specifically after that. But I mean, it's ideas that spark up that I always come up with, you know. But other than
Yeah.
that, nothing major. But that is one of the things I'm going to have coming up in the following
So is
weeks.
that, are you talking like the main motion picture of the first film
Yeah,
they
the
did?
main motion,
Okay.
the very first one, the Robert Wise directed Star Trek film, the Star Trek the motion picture. You know, that one that was cemented in saying that, well, we got the TV show when it got canceled, but now we get the motion picture, gets this buzz. I say, what's the picture going to be like? You know, because we saw it on television. What's it going to be like on the big screen? So
Yeah.
that's going to
Yeah,
be
it's gonna be interesting because nowadays we talk about films and like how they do and if they plan on doing sequels and stuff like that. And it's so funny because like that particular film is like one of my least favorite of the six, of the
I
first
think
six.
I think it is. Yeah, I was
But
gonna.
it's interesting because like you would think in this modern age, if like a film like that would probably bomb, like especially when it was kind of a success on TV.
Mhm,
But then, like, of course, Wrath of Khan came out, which is my favorite of the six.
mhm.
That was amazing. But
Right,
I would probably have to go back and rewatch the first one because if I'm going to watch your video, I want to go back and see
kind of get some
if,
idea
if
of.
if because I was so young, I just wanted more action. It's really not an action film,
No, it's
but it
not.
is it is a bit more cerebral. So I might have to go back and kind of just revisit it
Yeah,
to see if
because
I get any
it's
more appreciation out of it than I
yeah,
did.
because it's not a, let's say it's not a fan favorite, even though it made a little bit of money, but it was critically like slapped in the face. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a film that, you know, that it started the trend of like all these other Star Trek films, and what is your favorite and which one that stands out the most to you? And yeah, I mean, because like I say, Star Trek 2 is the best in the series of the original crew. For me, it's the Voyage Home that's my favorite, personally.
That's a fun one too. I like
Yeah,
that a lot too.
but that's how it is, though. I mean, and that's why I
Yeah.
say I'm just going to kind of go into a, kind of retrospective of that film, because it's not. I mean, it's got some great spectacles, but it's kind of light on what it does, So
hmm Well, I know later today at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. your time, we will be joining Kevin Lambert at the Entertainment headquarters as we sit down with a few other panel guests and review 1955's Tarantula, which we were all watching last night and kind of having fun chatting a little bit in our private group. But I believe that's live. So for those
yes,
that want to come check us out and chat with us about the movie, please stop by Kevin Lambert's Entertainment headquarters, and we'll be on there to review that film and talk about its significance and its legacy as a film, because it is quite good. Uh, as far as my own content, I'll be taking a break next week. I might get a couple of things in. It just depends on how much moving we're doing. Neko just told me that we might be able to get in there actually early as Wednesday on our new place. So that if that happens, I probably won't get much content out. But either way, please like and subscribe not only to Mr. Jedi over here on his channel, but as mine as well. If you have any comments about Jaguar, your theories, your feelings, do you think we're full of shit? We don't care. Just be nice about it.
yeah,
But either way, the next one I have is a couple weeks from now, and I'll be sitting down with Kevin Lambert, in fact, the guy we just mentioned, and we're going to be sitting down with Kamunga, the giant
oh, yeah,
spider.
that's
So that's going to be a lot of fun too. And Jedi, thank you again for joining me, sir. It's a pleasure always to talk to you. You're a great dude and a great friend and great content creator as well. So appreciate your time.
Thank
For
you
the
very
rest of
much.
you, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hopefully we see you later on.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.